Okay, good morning, everyone. We're here with Alina Oshyna from PsyLab in Ukraine to talk about non-cognitive assessment in the workplace. We'll begin with a couple introductory questions, then we'll talk about PsyLab and the type of assessment it provides, and then we'll get into some deeper questions about the future of workforce and pre-employment assessment. So thank you, Alina, for joining us today.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much, Nate, for this great experience, for inviting me, for the privilege. I'm really excited about it and really honored. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I'm excited to hear about some of the things they're working on. So let's start from the beginning. Where are you from, and how did you get interested in psychology and assessment?
Well, at this moment, I'm located where I was born. I was born in Dnipro, Ukraine. It's okay if you can't pronounce it. Almost nobody can. But half of my life I spent in Israel. I was taken to Israel when I was 7, and I got my first degree in Israel in psychology. Initially, I was really into medicine, and I dreamt to become a psychiatrist. I had my first book in psychiatry when I was about 13, and I was absolutely stunned by it. But in Israel, it's almost impossible to get accepted to the medical department in the university. So psychology was the closest, and I was very easily accepted. And then I've had a wow effect when we started research methods. I can remember it like I opened the book, and it was Cacioppo, I think everybody knows it. And it was there like, imagine you're an alien and you've never seen subway trains before, and you think it's a worm. It stops every now and then, something gets out of it and something gets into it, and you can imagine that it eats people and that it poops people. and you need to figure out what's this thing. And so I had like, wow, I'm ready to do this all day long. And I had a C on statistics. I had this 60 out of 100. And when people ask me like, how come this is your profession, you're so crazy about it, and you had such a low grade? And I'm saying like, well, they also have measure of validity. So they're also not 100% valid, like 100% reliable. And say, oh yeah, right. So and this is how I understood that it really fascinates me. It gets my blood bubbling. It's acceptable job in the biggest Israeli HR company. And I did. They had a whole day of selection rounds. Like there were about 30-50 people who came there to get selected, and I didn't even stand up to the first round. I was thrown out after the first round. And I said to myself, okay, one day I'm going to have this. Like one day, this is always going to be my business. I was so hurt by it that I didn't even make the first round. And after a few years, like after about 5 years, I've had the management of that same company here in Dnipro. And then I made the cross-cultural adaptation of all their assessments here in Ukraine. And I told them the story, like, listen, you didn't want me for 20 shekels an hour. Like, come on. And they said, yeah, right, this is not the position for you. It's okay. So this is the story, basically.
Interesting. So where did you go to grad school, and what specifically did you study? Like, what was your thesis on?
So my bachelor's was in Israel, and that was psychology major and criminology secondary. That's what brought me to become a polygraph examiner, which is also a kind of assessment. And my major here, my master's degree was here in Ukraine. While on my thesis was on the ability of polygraph to detect lies, and how it differs in emotionally resilient versus emotionally vulnerable people. Like, I did an experiment with a polygraph, and I've had people assessed with the assessment that now PsyLab provides. People were categorized into two groups, vulnerable versus resilient, and then I had them take a polygraph examination to see how polygraph is good when you have a resilient person in front of you, or if you have a vulnerable person in front of you. So I don't know if it's intuitive or counterintuitive, but vulnerable people are easier to detect lies in than resilient people. It's intuitive, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So yeah, I saw it in my data. Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
When I did the master's, I've seen this resilience assessment where I understood immediately that this is going to explode the world. It just needed to be taken out of that drawer where it was. And this is how I founded PsyLab. Basically, this is going to be one of the next questions, but the chain of thought is going directly there. That this is where I found this assessment, and I never forgot about it.
Yeah, so let's get into that. Tell me a little bit about, what the trait of resilience means and how you would go about measuring it.
The trait of resilience, I think it's one of the most complex traits. It's considered a personality trait. The first thing begins with the definition, and even before the definition, it begins with the name of this trait. This is a personality trait, and it has many names. One of them, by the way, is emotional stability. Okay, so it's related to emotions, and it's related to how one is capable of regulating own emotions and behavior under pressure, not like in stressful situations, meaning under some adverse impact, but it's not necessarily so. You don't necessarily have to go through an adverse impact for you to display emotional stability or resilience. For example, when you're oriented towards some goal and you need to overcome obstacles, it's not necessary that those obstacles are stressful to you. It requires some amount of volitional effort, some amount of self-discipline. So therefore, this trait is so basic and so popular, so required across all activities, because you need it in order to achieve any goal whatsoever. You need resilience to practice self-discipline. You need the resilience to practice goal-oriented behavior. It's the capability of a person to retain, to stay locked on your goal, even though something may distract you. You may experience some feelings that interfere with your activity. You may have some hardships on your way. So this resilience thing is what gives you the power, is what makes you overcome those obstacles. And this is very important in every aspect of life.
Yeah, you're absolutely right that just about any success or endeavor is going to be due to having something like this. And when I think of the word resilience, I often think of something external happening, but you're saying it's not the case. And sometimes it's just having the persistence and emotional stability to work hard through something, even if you have a hard time learning it. And like, there's nothing external happening, that you're just working hard to learn something, right?
Yes, right. You need to, like, it's the opposite of learn helplessness, or not even learn. It's the opposite of helplessness. It's the amount of effort you're capable of putting into your endeavors,
Yeah,
despite changing conditions.
Yeah, and that's going to be so important for job performance, I suppose, then, because it's not just, did you not make a sale today? Do you keep trying to sell the software? But it's pretty much everything you're working on, you need to have that level of persistence and conscientiousness.
Of course. And also in relationships, and in sports, and whatever activity is goal oriented and purposeful, you have to have it, because you will have to overcome external and internal obstacles. And also it's related to anxiety and to the perception of threats, like the way you perceive events as threatening to you. And neuroticism is the opposite of emotional stability. So basically, it's not being neurotic, being secure, meaning believing in your own capacity, and believing in the success of your endeavor, like the positive attitude in cognitive and emotional term towards your abilities, and towards, like, if I took myself this goal, then I was right, like cognitively relying on yourself, that you are okay, that you're not crazy, like you took something upon yourself because you know you can do it, and you also feel like that. This is also a component of resilience. Like, this resilience thing is a component of emotional stability, in those terms that you can regulate yourself, because the self-regulation is exactly when you overcome obstacles in such a way that you regulate yourself, you regulate your emotions, you don't allow them to overwhelm you, you don't allow your behavior to break apart, like you don't leave everything, you don't break the tools, you stay focused on your goal, and you stay effective in your behavior. So in this way, this is a component of emotional intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the effect is multiplied for leadership positions, because it's not just you that you're regulating, it's possibly your whole team. Like if you're the captain of a sports team, everyone else is following you, and you need to regulate your own emotions, and they'll keep doing that too, right?
Yeah, right. The load is even heavier on people who need to manage others. The responsibility is much heavier on them, and then they are required to be resilient and to be stable, because people look like they look at them. And I saw that a way of building resilient teams is by putting resilient people around vulnerable ones. And so that the vulnerable, they look at the resilient person, they check in with him, that everything's okay. They're looking at that person, they see that that person is functioning and is fine. And this gives them the feedback that, okay, everything is fine. We can go forward, like we can move forward. And in this way, when you distribute the resilient people across your teams, then all the vulnerable people, they have this effect, this calming effect, by being around the resilient person. So if a leader is resilient, then his followers, they look at him and they get an indication that everything is okay.
Yeah, very important. So you founded the company
Yeah.
PsyLab to help develop and deliver these assessments. Tell me about PsyLab. How long has it been around, and what are you focusing on?
Well, as I said, this resilience test was the major thing that brought me to founding the startup. It's been several years that this assessment was around, and I saw that time is passing by and nothing changes in the industry. After I've been in a few companies and I've seen a few assessments, it was absolutely clear to me that there is nothing that addresses this problem of an adequate measurement of resilience other than self-report measures. And nothing came by. Companies were created like psychometrics and stuff. They offered game-based assessments, or I don't know, kind of experimental design. I mean, design of the assessment was like a simulation. But nothing was to address this emotional stability thing that basically is fundamental to performance. And then I was faced the question, if not me, then who? This what brought me to this. But the more I communicated with founders and with company owners and with hiring managers, I realized that, of course, resilience is great and it's required everywhere, and it's indeed number one skill across occupations. But I can do so much more. My thing, what I divide now, this is what I'm good at. And this, the design of this resilience assessment is so special. It's rooted in the Soviet theory, it's rooted in the Soviet approach that is called activity theory, which I think is also sexy about it. But what? Yeah, the Soviet psychologists, they had this polemic, they had this argument with the Western school, where they said that psychology deals with, in the Western world, psychology deals with the mental organization, and like the subject of psychology is consciousness in the Western world, which is not the case with Soviet approach. Soviet approach says that the subject of psychology is human activity, human goal-oriented conscious activity, because your consciousness, nobody cares about it as long as it doesn't come about in some form of behavior. Like, nobody what you think or what you feel as long as you don't do anything about it. And so their measurement approach, their approach in experimentation and measurement, is that every psychological being, entity, phenomenon can be only measured through observation of it in activity. Only when a person is placed in a situation that requires him to practice that trait, only then you can really know about it. And this is how this resilience test is built. It simulates a stressful experience on the subject, like it puts him in a situation when the subject fails to perform the task that he's instructed to perform. And this is how we can make any inferences about the resilience of that subject. Not by asking him a question what he thinks about himself. Because, you know, I once filed a visa application to the United States. Like, if someone asks what tests are about, what's wrong with them, what's the problem? And then I remember, I remember when I filed the visa application to the United States, and there were questions like, are you planning to go to the United States to commit an act of terrorism? Like, yes or no? You need to answer yes or no. Are you planning to come to the United States and smuggle, I don't know, illegal stuff? Like, I want to see I want to see the person who answered yes on those questions.
Yes. Just like pre-employment tests, like, do you think it's okay to steal from your employer? Like, who's going to answer yes?
Well, yes. So this is an interesting case that you now mentioned about integrity test. And I don't know, like, you don't know how shocked you're going to be that people actually confess on those tests.
Mm-hmm.
They do say yes, like some, because I worked once on a very interesting integrity test that was devised not by psychometricians, but by interrogation officers from the Israeli, Mossad and Shabak and stuff. And yeah, and what they did, they inserted into the questionnaire social desirability question. And if the subject would give a socially desirable response, then he would get a prompt like, the system has detected that you don't respond in a perfectly sincere manner. Please give more sincere answers from now on. Okay? Did you ever steal from your employer? And they would say, look, yes, because they would get a feeling that the system somehow detects if they're truthful or not. And so the assessment must be built in such a way, the personality assessment, if it measures some personality quality, to carry the quality of a proof on that person, they need to elicit that state. And this is when you can say, okay, now I know about that person, that this person is this, and that. And not the other way around. And so I decided that I'm capable of devising this kind of assessment, thanks to my, knowledge of the Soviet stuff. There is a method that if you're creative enough, you can devise measurements that would carry the robustness of a legal proof. So this is what PsyLab is about. PsyLab is a factory of assessments that are devised in such a way so that it will be very hard to fake on them. And that do not depend on the person's even knowledge about themselves, because people are, even if they are completely truthful, even if they are completely sincere, you never can say that people know everything about themselves.
Yeah, that's true. It's best to all you can do is observe behavior, even if the behavior is only answering questions on a self-report assessment, but you want to get something better than that. And I totally hear you about the messaging too. I remember learning from one of my professors in grad school saying strict instructions actually have an effect too. Like, if you start the test saying you must answer all of these questions truthfully, your results will be checked by a psychologist. If you don't answer truthfully, you will not be eligible for this job. Like, just saying things like that gets people to respond more effectively.
Yes. And also the polygraph, by the way. The polygraph, nobody knows. I mean, not many know. Maybe I'm going to reveal something right now that maybe polygraph examiners are going to be mad at me. But there is no such thing as a physiological reaction that is a signal of being untruthful. There is no such thing as physiological expression of telling a lie. There is no such thing. For example, I can connect you to the polygraph, clap my hands near you in a sudden way, and I will see everything goes like all over the place in your physiology. Or I can have you solve math problems, and when they become difficult enough, I will see that you have an activation of your sympathetic system. Like it will, okay? So the polygraph only works when the test taker, when the SSC, when the assessed person is led to believe that the polygraph has the capability of detecting them telling the truth or lying. If the person doesn't believe the polygraph, then you're, as an examiner, you're in trouble. Like it's not going to work.
So the person has to be engaged in it too, not just the examiner.
Yes. Yeah, before you start the actual examination, there's a phase when it's called a stimulation. Stimulation. The test takers needs to be stimulated before the examination begins. And there are many tricks, but you need to trick the person to believe that the polygraph sees them through like an.
So when you're establishing that baseline, you're not just establishing the baseline of normal physiologic indicators, but also clapping your hands or doing something to make them change so that you can make it appear that you're see everything.
Yeah, the subject needs to be put in a state to be good for testing in polygraph.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So having these assessments that are not self-report are going to be more effective than self-report assessments for non-cognitive traits, correct?
Excuse me?
So we want to have assessments that are not self-report format?
Yes, of course. We want to have assessments that are not self-report formats because of one simple thing, because the setting of pre-employment, the setting of selection is a setting where subjects are motivated to achieve certain results. I'm not saying that self-reports are not good at all. For example, when you go to a doctor and the diagnostic of a doctor is such a setting where your best interest to be as truthful to provide the picture to the doctor that is maximally close to the reality of things as you perceive them. And for this case, self-reports are perfect, are okay. So in this case, development, when coaches come to you and say, I want to know your talents in order to maximize your performance, to maximize your experience, to make you feel happier, to make you realize maximum of your potential, blah, 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 then you would be maximally truthful. Then you will disclose your best, like what you think about yourself. You will never distort your answers to the extent that you yourself are aware of. But in the setting of pre-employment, of selection, when the person knows exactly what you want to see, and when the person needs to get the job, then there is absolutely no ground, no place to talk about self-report assessments. And personality tests for pre-employment, they were proven so many times to be not so strong. They only give the hiring manager, maybe the recruiter, the convenience of this illusion, as if the person you're talking to, you know something about that person. Like it's a very comforting illusion of thinking that you have the information. And also this is the thing that it's a prophecy that fulfills itself. So what's the proof of the fact that there's a problem with this? Is that there are so many assessment companies, and the assessment industry, the personality assessment industry, is multi-billion dollars, right?
Mhm.
But still people are coming and having this pain hires. Like they buy tests, they use these tests, but they still can't can achieve the match, right?
Mhm.
So this is the most solid proof that something's wrong in here.
Yeah, and they aren't effectively evaluating the validity of these assessments either, I suppose, well, at least in some cases. I know many of the providers do have team of IO psychologists that are on, the topic of validation, but many of the assessment companies that are out there are just somebody writing tests on some basic skill topics, right?
Of course, there needs to be an economical justification of those validity studies. What are you gonna say? Like, let me run a validity study for you to stop using this assessment? Like,
yeah, to show you that everything you've done for the past 5 years is not right.
yeah, how am I gonna sell this? And also, there are validity studies about personality tests in pre-employment, where I saw that they were rendered invalid until this polygraph ban for pre-employment, where employers needed to use something instead of the polygraph. And this was like this gap in the market, that there was this vacuum that brought the personality tests in the void that was created after the polygraph was banned. And this is when the studies claiming that personality tests are good, valid predictors of job performance, blah blah blah, started to appear like mushrooms after the rain. Only after polygraph was banned, all of a sudden they remembered, oh, personality tests, they're so amazing. And this is
Yeah, but you're right. A lot of them are limited usefulness. There's some components that are highly correlated with job performance, like conscientiousness, the persistence, resilience aspect. But other things that people look at in non-cognitive assessments, the research shows that they're just not correlated with job performance.
No, this is not intuitive. This is counterintuitive. For example, this emotional stability. I don't understand how come emotional stability is not related to job performance. What if you're anxious, if you're biting your nails all day, and if all you can think about is your insecurity? How come it's not related to job performance? This is strange.
Yeah,
because nobody confesses in that. Nobody says that on the personality test.
At least not in a job context. They're never going to say, I'm too anxious to do my job.
Yes, of course. So this is the problem. This is the problem with the methodology.
Very good point. So we need to have a non-cognitive assessment as part of the selection algorithm, but we need to be thoughtful about how we do it in terms of the format and how we combine it with, hard skills, right?
Yes, of course. How we measure it. We want to measure the real thing. And this is not an easy task. And also we have this problem of the user experience today. It became a real problem already, because once people were ready, mentally, morally ready to take the MMPI, for example, I don't know, 400, 600 questions. And now people are not willing to take an assessment that takes more than 10, 15 minutes. So this is also an issue to consider. You need to devise a good assessment that is not too stressful, too painful to the test taker.
Yeah, you got to focus on what you're trying to measure, and you can have some adaptive algorithms to make it easier. I remember when I was in grad school, we worked on a project for mood disorders, and the linear version of the assessment was 636 questions. And by making it adaptive, we got it down to like an average of 70 with the same level of accuracy, just because most people don't have certain mood disorders. And with 1 or 2 questions, you can figure out they're not in that direction and don't go in that direction anymore.
Yeah, this is amazing because the IRT wouldn't be used so much in non-cognitive assessments before. Everybody I couldn't even find literature on IRT personality tests, let alone like even binary format. And now that you're telling me this, it excites me really.
So what do you think is the future of non-cognitive assessments in the workplace and employment selection?
Question. It's a really good question because recently I talked to Leslie Thomas. She's the chief psychometrics officer in Criterion. I had a great conversation with her, and she said she made a brilliant point. She's like, I was amazed with her strategic thinking, and she made this point that not even cognitive skills, but hard skills, like skills that you can learn in a university, those technical skills or knowledge, are going to become so less important because of the rate of change we're facing now. Like somebody said, that by the time you graduate from college, what you learned in that college is obsolete. So like you need to update your knowledge like every day. And so nobody's even required to write code anymore. Nobody's like, so so those hard skills, they are not going to be the focus of assessment, but rather what's going to be the focus of assessment is how you are capable of handling that change. She said that brain is not wired to handle this rate of change, this amount of information. Like this is overwhelming, really. And what's going to matter is who's going to be valued is people who have this characteristic, this trait to adapt, to handle the change, to be prepared that you invested this amount of effort in something and it's outdated right now. You need to overcome this. So again, I'm getting back to this resilience topic. That resilience is becoming even more important. That the amount of stress applied to people is enormous, and so non-cognitive assessment is going to become increasingly more important with time. This is not only my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because hard skills, much of it's becoming automated, and it's now possible to learn hard skills anywhere. Like you don't have to go to college to learn how to become a computer programmer. You can learn everything online with YouTube if you need to. In which case, just having resilience and persistence to do so is what's important.
Exactly. And even more than that, about even cognitive assessments. Let's take this IQ testing. Not IQ, tell me how it's called. Cognitive ability.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of cognitive abilities, like abstract, verbal, non-verbal, whatever you name it. So let's begin with that. People are trained to take those tests. And I'm not sure how even you can rely today on the scores of basic cognitive assessments, right? Basic IQ tests. Let alone there were problems with them, that they favor white males and all these things. So there's a number of problems with them, with the basic cognitive assessments. Yeah, I'm talking about the usual, the good old cognitive assessments. Now, what I think is interesting to measure today is not to administer cognitive assessments, but rather administer assessments of executive functions. Meaning is what I'm curious to know about a person is how well he learns new information. Learning ability, educability. And this is not necessarily it doesn't necessarily come about as a abstract. Everybody thought that this Raven's matrices abstract thinking is the best predictor of, I don't know, success, job performance, academic performance, whatever. But today everybody knows it. They're like kids learn this at school, and you can learn it. These are very basic skills. They don't tap into those prototypic skills, like the prototypic functions of your brain in general to learn new information, regardless of its abstract or verbal and non-verbal. And attention skills and all those things. So what I became recently interested in measuring is like the whole umbrella of executive functions, which I think must load heavily on job performance and on academic performance. And so I don't even know to which category does it fall, under cognitive or non-cognitive assessments.
Yeah, that's difficult because it's not just a direct cognitive assessment like, do you know this? But it's, are you able to learn it if you need to? One of my friends is Marie De Beer, who's a researcher in South Africa, and her test that she sells is called the learning potential test, because it's getting at that same idea there. It's not just what do you know now, but how much potential do you have to learn the skills you need to quickly when you need to.
Yes, this is a very, very demanded construct. There were so many people, almost everybody wants to know about this educability, this learning ability. Everybody wants to know, all the employers want to know it, because there is no such employee first thing that on an onboarding, what you do, you teach him, you have him acquire new knowledge and skills. So if he's like, it's a problem.
Yeah. And part of it is that resilience and persistence piece, but another part of it is a cognitive aspect, like how quickly are you able to learn?
Yes, how quickly are you able to learn? How long are you able to concentrate on a topic? By the way, emotional regulation and self-regulation is one of the executive functions, which is resilience, in other words. Attention span. So there's about 7 or 8 functions that are measured by simulation kinds of tests, like the CPT, the continuous performance task. This is one of them. Of course, if you're trained and you trained yourself, you can show some results. But if the test has a really good analytical engine behind it, so it's going to be very hard to cheat on it.
Mm-hmm. I've seen ones really specific too. Like I've worked with Charles Stansfield, a researcher here in the US, who has set something up like this specifically for language learning. So he has a language learning skills tests where he basically like teaches you a fake language and sees how quickly you can learn it. So it's not testing you whether you mastered English or Arabic or an existing language, but it's, like how quickly can you simulate the concepts of noun conjugations and how quickly can you learn new words and things like that.
Yeah, because this is a good test for selection of spies, I think. This is good,
Mm-hmm.
This is really cool because you have a separate system in your brain for languages, and it's very interesting. Yeah, I like it.
You're right. It is. it's totally wired separately from executive function like reasoning.
Yes. So these are more basic functions that condition all the rest of the development, like all the rest of all the rest. So indeed, this is what's gonna catch the stage. I think in the nearest future, because like I think employers are not gonna care how your code writing skills are about to be. So, and also the UX in technology, all the tech companies that hire software engineers, they really care not to annoy the test takers with the assessment. And if the assessment is boring, even they need to entertain the candidates. This is funny.
Yeah, I've heard stories of people that have dropped out of the hiring process because they've come across a test they thought was just a waste of their time or too long, or not assessing what it needs to be. And candidates are smart, and the hiring market now is a little more on the candidate side than the hiring side than it used to be. So you have to be able to provide an assessment that is engaging.
Yes, and this is why also this speaks in favor of inventing something more interesting than self-report questionnaires. Because it's boring.
Yes. And you need to have face validity that people stay engaged, but not so much face validity that they can figure out how to game the system.
Yes. Yeah. So they need to be smart and not boring. Like I'm in favor of game-based assessments. I really like that. That's because probably I've never been seeking the easy way, like it's tough to invent a game-based assessment and it's tough to implement it. But once you're there, you're on the top. Like there's nothing better than that.
And there's so much data out there too. I came across a company called Solstin, who tries to look at the big data that's available in games. So like, you're not even just making a specific assessment that's gamified, but you're using actual games and looking at the data there and like trying to evaluate resilience and persistence of people. How many times do they try a hard stage in a game that they're just playing for fun on their phone? And like, there's so much data out there in terms of hours being spent on games every day.
Wow, this is a dream of someone like me to get the hands on that data. I would spend days and nights, and I'm sure I would reveal things. but but there's a problem with this. I think I have a feeling that when you're in a game, gaming, right? I'm not sure if your behavior in the game can be extrapolated to your behavior in real life. Even though I would need to see data, but I think there might be a problem with generalizability of that behaviors if taken, by analogy. Because like you can be badly persistent in that game just because you're avoiding to deal with your real life problems, which like you seem very persistent on the game, which is quite the opposite in real life.
Yeah, you're just procrastinating.
You can spend hours and hours playing this game while like your house is on fire.
Yeah, and I suppose it depends what kind of game too. Like if you're just running around shooting zombies, it's different than like one of those thinking games like Civilization where you're trying to manage a country. Persistence is
the type of game you play says something about you. Like the type of game that you choose is also reflective of your personality, isn't it?
I 100% agree. A lot of my career interest came from a Nintendo game I played in 1990. And it sparked my interest in machine learning and linear regression. And I was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. But it was just a game to manage armies in ancient China.
Yeah, I remember that. Also, I've talked to someone. He owns a really big tech company, and he said, like, when I select developers, I ask them if they play computer games, if they play video games. If they don't, hire them. This is a criterion that he makes a checkbox on it before he hires someone.
Yeah,
What
I
do you
believe
think
it.
about it?
Yeah, and like you said, it's not just do you play, but what kind of games?
Yes, and how much time you are ready to spend doing that. Absolutely. So if an assessment is a game, then there is 100% engagement, at least among those who are players. And I think and also another thing that is good about game-based assessments is that it's not obvious, they're not face valid, it's not obvious to the individual what behaviors the game registers as as relevant.
Yeah, that's true. And there's so many potential factors that you could or traits that you could assess, but it's going to take a lot of research to figure out what those are.
Well, you can collect versatile data while you're collecting game behaviors. Like, this is a little bit of, like, for example, in this resilience test that I work with, there are a lot of sources of behavioral data. It's not just the answers, but it's also the memory, like how the memory gets impaired. It's also the reaction relevant, how they get crazy after the stress was experienced by the individual. Also, there's a very interesting metric. There's like the decision making. This is something new that I learned when I worked on it, that the decision making process, it consists of the latent phase when you come up with this decision, and the executive phase when you execute what you decided to do. So like there are two parts to it. And then I measure the reaction times of the individual if the ratio between the latency phase and action phase, if the ratio changed. The same thing while gaming, there are a lot of sources of information. There are like multiple manifestations of behavior.
Yeah, there's
which
time.
The person cannot control.
Yeah, there's time spent, there's focus, there's what things they try first, in approaching the problem. There's so many things we can measure.
Yeah. Yes, and the trend in time, and like so much. This is impossible. And then you can, like, there is something valuable that you really extract after that intervention that you made. A lot of things you can come up with and say, like, reveal about that person.
Well, we're coming on the end of the hour here, so if anyone that's listening is interested in applying some of these principles and wants to get in touch with you, how would they do that so they can start working with PsyLab and implement non-cognitive assessment and gamification?
Well, by the way, I want to make an announcement that I'm making I want to engage early adopters, and if there are individuals who would like to try this assessment in their company and see how it works in their workplace, I'll be very glad to collaborate. So anyone who is willing to participate is welcome. And my name, I'm registered with this name on LinkedIn. The link to my website address was published here. And everybody, if anyone wants to find me, they can ask you, Nate. You know where to find me. I'm always here. I'm always happy to collaborate, to do some psychometrics, some measurement, to develop an assessment. This is the purpose of my life.
Me too. I just love assessment psychometrics. So I'll put a link down below in the show notes, both to your LinkedIn profile and to PsyLab's website. So anybody's interested can go to either one of those.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to chat today. This was very interesting. I wasn't aware of this area of psychometric research until I started talking with you. So I found it very educational to talk through some of these things, and I hope the listeners have as well.
Thank you so much. I had a great pleasure too, and thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you all for listening to this, and we'll see you at the next webinar.
Bye-bye.